And welcome students. We are going to start working with Adobe Illustrator. Adobe Illustrator is a pretty powerful app that aids in image creation, particularly when we start looking at things like vector graphics. It's a lot more powerful than, like, let's say, just your regular Paint app, because there's just so many different things that you can do. We're not going to go into everything in the scope of this class, but we will kind of talk about a few of the features that we will be using. Now, this layout that you see right here is, if you look right up here, is known as the Essentials layout. Now, there are other layouts that you can go into, but this is the one that we're going to be working with. If you're not, you can just click up here and change it. And then if anything gets messed up here and you need to reset it, you just click Reset Essentials, and you can see it will change it. And notice, like, this window which I had collapsed had minimized. So I'm just going to do that. And I'm going to jump right into making a new document. So I just go File, New, and in here you can see you have several different tabs. Now yours might look a little different depending upon which version of Adobe CC you're using. This is, I believe, 2017. So what I'm going to do though is I want to make, you can see I have the options for mobile, which makes it more of a phone-oriented image. I can do web, which is more optimized for desktop web pages. Or you can even do things like print, which will give you options for like letter, legal, different paper sizes here, and of course ones that might be more suited for film and video. We're going to work primarily though here on the web interface, and to get started we're going to choose Common, so make sure it's just on that. And what we're going to do here is I'm just going to call this Illustrator Intro, and I'm going to add actually after that logo. So Illustrator Intro logo, and I'm going to delete the width and height dimensions the same, make sure the pixels, I'm going to make sure the orientation is on landscape. I'm going to also come down here to the color mode, and you can see we have the choices of RGB or CMYK. RGB is what you want to leave it on if you're going to be making this for display upon like a computer monitor or a tablet or any kind of really screen interface. CMYK is what you want if you're going to be printing this. Since we're not designing this for print, we're designing this for screens, we're going to leave it on RGB. Underneath more settings, you can see that you have even more settings that you can customize and control. So for example, here you can see you have the raster effects, you have the size again, you have the different bleed effects. There's all these different things that you can do inside of there. All right. So I'm just going to go ahead then and click on Create. Okay. And I'm just going to say, since I'm on a 2-in-1 device here, it's asking me if I want to do the touch interface. I'm not going to do that right now. I'm just going to leave it on desktop mode. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get started by making a couple shapes. So over here you can see I have several different tools available to me. Now, for example, this is not fully here. You can see that this is actually kind of brought out a little bit. Sometimes these tools, if you click and hold down on them, they will hold open to different options here. So you get the shaper tool, pencil tool, smooth, path eraser, join tool. So if you don't see a shape under your toolbars here that appears here, it might be in that location. You just might have to click and hold to find out what you're using. All right. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come right over here to this rectangle tool. And if I click and hold under there, you can see I have the option for rectangle, rounded rectangle, ellipse, polygon, star, and flare. Similarly down here, we're going to use this eventually here is the gradient tool. Now the gradient tool is just that, it's just a gradient. So if I just grab a gradient tool and I try to do anything with it, you can see not much is happening right now. Right, this is because there's nothing here on the canvas yet for that gradient tool to use it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click right here on the layers panel so I can see what exactly is happening as I go through this document. Now the nice thing about layers is that you can have multiple things going on and you can set stacking orders and stuff like that in order to help really give an image life. So let's go back to that rectangle tool, and I'm going to start off by first just drawing a rectangle. Now this rectangle, you can see it has all these different options available on it. What I want to do is give this rectangle though some color. So I can come right up here. I have two different color fields. This white box right here is for the fill color, and this black box is for the stroke color. So if I come over here and I choose on, let's say, the orange, you can see that it will fill it with an orange. If I go to the stroke color and I say make that blue, it will change that to blue. If I choose red, it would make it red. Right? Again, that's just the stroke color. I'm going to leave it as black for now though. And what I'm going to do now is I want to maybe go and apply a gradient to this, for example. If I take a gradient to this, I draw my gradient line across, nothing much has happened yet. Even though it's trying to draw it on there, nothing much is happening. So we're going to come back to that at the moment because I don't want to simply just use just a regular rectangle. What I want to do is be able to draw a logo. And so in order to do that, I'm going to use the star tool. Now the star tool is not just click and drag, because if I just click and drag, I can make a normal star. But I want to be able to make a multi-pointed star. So if I just click and drag, just click, you'll see by this menu that comes up that asks me for a number of points. Right? It also gives me default radius values, which I'm not going to worry about. But I can change the number of points. So let's say I change it to 6 points. Now I have a 6-pointed star. If I go and change that to, let's say, 8, I can have an 8-pointed star. Right? And I can click and I can drag that over to my shape here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this and make it a little bit larger. Now if I just click and drag it around normally, you can see it easily distorts that shape. I don't want it to be distorted, so if I hold down the Shift key while I drag, even though I can move this any way I want, it's going to retain the aspect dimensions of that star. So I'm going to just hold that, kind of drag it so it's about so big. And I want to drag that down so that it overlaps this rectangle that I made earlier. And I'm going to go ahead and copy that, and I'm going to paste it so I have one that's going to kind of fall on each side of this rectangle. And you're going to see why here in a second. Right? So now I have that in line. And the nice thing is too, as I start doing this, you can see that there's these like little invisible lines that start popping up. I would say visible, but very faint, like there's a purple one here. What these do is they help act as guidelines so that way you can line your shapes up. So like right now, this one's lined to the center of that object, which is what I want. If I look here, see this one is also currently aligned to the center and to the sides. All right. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually create this into one giant shape. Right? This is how we can start making our shapes look unique. And I can even come in here and say I wanted these stars to be bigger if I wanted to. I could have made it so they came across this whole body here, for example. I could have done that and just said, hey, I want the star to be as big as this shape. And then I could have come in here and say, oh, well, this doesn't match. Now I need to go make these match. I can do that as well. And, let's go ahead and just do that. I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste those. And again, I'm doing this all live here, so if there's a mistake made, you will see it happen pretty quickly. And it's okay if these overlap right now, because they're going to, in a second, not overlap. And just bring that up with the arrow key. Make sure that's nice and in place. There. Looks like everything's fairly well lined in with the shape. If I look at them. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to click my mouse cursor and just drag over all top of them. And you can see that now every shape has been selected. What I want to do now is I want to kind of merge these as one shape. But I could group them, but that's not going to take care of the lines that are on the inside. I want to get rid of those lines that are in there. And what I can do is I can actually come up here and see we have the options you can select it in here. But I want to actually come up here and be able to use the Pathfinder tool. All right, and in the Pathfinder tool, I have several different options. Add, intersect, exclude, subtract, minus, back, divide, trim, merge, crop, etc. If we choose the merge option, all right, it's going to give me this warning. I'm just going to click OK. And you can see nothing has happened. Instead, go back to Pathfinder. If I click on any of these other ones, intersection, so again, nothing much has changed. All right. Part of the reason why we're having this trouble is because we're just trying to use this built-in menu here. If we go over to Window, we have the option right here for Pathfinder, which brings us this little menu right here. And this is actually more what we want here. So we have different shape modes, and this allows us to easily see things. So right here is Unite, and this is the one that we truly want to use here. So I click on Unite. You can see that it takes that shape and makes it into one solid object now. Right? Now, if we zoom in on this, like some of these corners here, for example, you can see here I don't quite have a perfect merger. So I can actually come in here and use the selection tools if I want to try and change these anchor points a little bit. But because we've merged these shapes now, it's not going to let us really come in and fix that. So I'm not really going to worry about that one little big point down there. And since I've zoomed in, if I hit, I believe it's Control 0, I can zoom all the way right back out. Close the Pathfinder. And what I want to do is, I'm just going to minimize that layers for now. I want to take this shape here. I'm going to kind of drag it a little more to the center of my document. And it's a pretty big logo right now, so what I'm going to do is actually going to kind of hold down the Shift key and shrink that text size down there a little bit. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to end up putting some other stuff on top of this. To get started, let's go ahead and add in some more things. So I'm going to come right up here to the window again. Window. And I'm going to scroll down to the symbols. Right. If I go to symbols, you can see we have different symbols in here, but I want to go to the symbol libraries, and I'm going to go down to Regal Vector Pack. And in this vector pack, it has different shapes that I can use. So in here, I'm going to start off by choosing these scrolls right here. So I'm just going to click and drag those off, and I want 2 of those, so I'm going to click and drag 2 of them. I also want this shield logo here. And I'm also going to want this pair of wings. Oh man, not that one. That one looks a little fluffy. Let's actually take this one. There we go. All right, so we have different things that we can include in here. So that's all we're going to pull from here for now. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take this. I'm going to use this as kind of a backdrop behind a lot of what I'm doing. And I'm going to take this shield logo and also set that in here. But if you notice, everything has an issue with how it's being presented because we have to look at how we're doing that with our layers. All right. And if I really want these to be their own thing, I can, of course, organize them here in layer 1, or I could also put them on their own layer. So what I'm going to do is in here in layer 1, I want these wings to really be on the very back. So I'm going to drag those all the way to the bottom. And now you can see the wings are in the back. This shield logo here, I might want that to be, for example, right here at the bottom. Right? Or if I don't want it at all, I can hit the delete key and it disappears, leaving with just the wings here. Now these scroll banners, I'm going to want to put these in here, roughly about right here and right here. And so we have the start of our new logo here. I'm just going to minimize that. All right. Now, before I proceed, let's see if we can go back and apply that gradient that we've been talking about to this center image here. So we really want to make it more than just a solid color. All right, I'm going to close this. Click on the shape I want the gradient to. And we can actually, if we go to our window here, we can open up the gradient panel. And here is our current gradient slider. And if I click this drop down, I can choose different gradients that I may want to use. See right now it's set on white and black. Maybe, for example, I want it to be set to sky. And you can see it automatically will apply that gradient to the whole document. Right? Or I can choose something like summer. All right, now, if I want to change this gradient, if I come here and double click on this slider, I can change the color of what I want that to be. All right, so maybe I don't want it to be this kind of central radial one. Maybe I want it to be more like the sky, where it kind of slowly starts as one color and darkens to another. So if I click here on the gradient scars, maybe instead of being blue, I want that to kind of start more as a orangish yellow. And as it goes this way, it's going to become more of a kind of a red color. So I can just click right here in the RGB spectrum. And as I do that, you can see that it will give me the options of what those colors will be like. Now I can, of course, add even more colors into there if I want. A nice thing too is now that I pick these colors, I can actually slide these around here and choose how I want the presentation of those colors to be. And it gives it a lot more flavor and character when I start doing that. All right. Now, I'm going to next come to these shapes right here. And these are kind of small, so I'm actually going to just stretch them out a little bit. And because I want them to retain the same dimensions, even though I had dragged 2 of them in here earlier, I'm just going to stretch them first to get the size I want. And I'm just going to copy and paste those to where I want them to be. So these are going to just sit right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the color of these shapes here. So if I double click on this shape, it's going to ask me if I want to edit the symbol definition. I'm just going to click on OK. And you'll see it resizes it back to the original size. That's okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in on that shape there. And I'm going to go ahead and use my selection tool, click on the shape. Now, if I click on shape, you can see it doesn't select every piece of that shape. Rather, it selects a chunk of that shape. Now, you have to be careful that you don't click on the sides because then you're going to change the stroke. We want to click on, instead, the actual shape itself. All right. So up here, if you look at these shapes, you can see, for example, we have a color. Now, this color is set to white. I can come up here and I can change these to different colors. So, for example, maybe I want it to be this cyan color. And when I do that, you can see it applies it here. I can also come over here, click on this side, do the same thing. All right, I just accidentally clicked out of the shape there. Click on this again, go to cyan. Now, the one thing I do have to watch out for is that when I do this, you see it grab that entire shape. I don't want the entire shape, I just want this piece on the inside. So, I think I actually went a little too far in. Oh, okay. Well, I just had to reset the stroke on those. And in here, I also have these smaller triangles. Now, because these are behind the main shapes, I'm actually going to take those just to be a shade darker than the cyan. I'll probably go like this color right here, just to make that a little darker. Now, when I exit out of this shape, right, and Control 0, you can see that it not only applied it to the one, but it applied it to the other one as well. So when you do a simple definition change, it applies it across both shapes that are on your artboard here. All right, now my logo is started. I'm not quite done because I also want to come in and be able to add things like some text. All right, so I'm going to use the text tool next. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually draw across the center image here. And you see it throws in some gibberish text, so I'm just hit the backspace and delete that. And what I'm going to do to start off is put my name in there. And you can see my name is pretty small, so I want to actually change it. Up here, I have the options for things like font size. All right, so I'm going to make this like size 48, maybe even size 60, just to make sure it's large enough. Now, see, 60 is too big, so 48 was just a little small. I'm going to go, say, somewhere in the middle, like 56. All right, there's my text. Then I want to choose a font to actually make this look nice and presentable. By default, this is on Myriad Pro, but I don't want Myriad Pro. Maybe I want something that's a little bit more presentable. And you can see kind of what the text will look like along the side here. So I'm going to look for a text that is going to be, in this case, professional and will be viewable within the logo itself. So I'm just going to look, and you can look through all the different styles. If you don't have this particular text in your folder, it just made the font may not be installed on your computer. So let's just go ahead and go with, for our purposes, let's take Oxford there. Right. So there's the text right there. And of course, I can do things like center that and stuff like that. And of course, if you look right now, the text is not exactly centered. So I can actually grab that and move where the object is. Notice I switched over here to the direct selection tool to move that. And if I want to, of course, change the size of this text box, I can use the anchor there to move that around if I want. But this text, of course, if you notice, is also not that large. So I might go ahead now, because of the new font style, bring that up to which font point I want that to be at. Now here you can see that it's not big enough, so I'm going to switch back to editing this shape so that way the text field is large enough to support that. Okay. Just gotta be careful to make sure you grab the right shape. All right, and so I'm just going to try and make sure that's kind of centered. And there's the visual markers giving the center. So there's my name. And maybe I want to make these just a little bit larger too to better represent what I'm doing. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Now the only thing is that now these are kind of cresting over the center logo here. So I'm going to go over to my layers panel. I'm going to take that center object there. I'm actually going to bring that up just underneath my name so it sits over top of those two banners. Now, what I'm going to do with these banners next is I'm going to go ahead and add text to them. Now, I can't just click and add text. That option doesn't exist. So I have to use the text tool. Right? And of course, we have different things. So we're going to come down here. We have, for example, text on a path. And if it says you have to click on the non-compound, I'm asking to type for a path. So it doesn't let me do that. But I can, of course, try just the regular typing tool. And in that typing tool, notice our text is really big. Let's take it back down to something like 18-point font. And we're going to go ahead and put graphic designer. Now it's a little hard to see right now because it's over top of this, but I can click and drag that object to where I want it to be. Now this is another reason why using layers is really handy, and we'll talk more about layers as we get further into what we're dealing with here. And I'm just going to drag this so it's a little bit larger and increase the font size from, let's say, 18 to 36. And we want that text so that it sits inside of that banner there. Now, in order for us to do that, we come right up here to this little arch-looking thing, which is Make Envelope. All right, so I click on the Making Envelope, and there's different styles I can do. If I click under the style, you can see there's different styles. Now, we want the one that best matches this banner here, which is the Rise style. So if I click on Rise, and if I just click Preview, you can actually see what it's going to look like before I even click Apply. So if I click OK, that graphic designer now has that Rise design to it. Right? And of course, I can do the same thing down here. I can come in here and do another text field right here. And we're going to say for hire. And I'm going to, again, do the same thing I did before. I'm going to take this for hire here, and I want to change that over with an envelope. So I'm going to click on the icon there, make it Rise, just keep that as defaults for now. Click OK, and you can see that for hire is now inside of this banner. And that about concludes everything, folks, for our basic logo to get started. You guys are going to, you should have this exact same logo here, except to say your name in here. The last thing I'm going to have you guys do here, though, just before we sign off, is if you would like, you can go ahead and try to add in different. You can just look at these different tools in here, see some of the different options and capabilities that are available within here. For example, like things like different grading tools and stuff like that you can do. You can look at the different dropper tools. There's a whole bunch of different options in here of different things that you can hold down and look at. That we will get into some of the things within this course, but not necessarily all the things in this course. So that concludes our note, folks. Until next time.